I never bought into ghost stories. Not until that night in the mountains of Appalachia. The military doesn't leave room for superstition. You're trained to trust coordinates, maps, and orders, not whispers in the dark. Legends don't belong in our world. But the moment we rolled into that base, something in the air shifted. It wasn't right. You could feel it in your bones, like the ground itself was holding something back. We were a recon detachment sent deep into the woods. The kind of mission so routine, it barely made sense. Just a surveillance sweep of an old installation. 2 weeks in, off the grid, then back to base. Simple on paper, but the deeper we drove, the heavier the silence became. Not the normal quiet of the wilderness, but the kind that feels staged, deliberate. Even the insects had gone still. I stared through the transport window, watching the tree line thicken into a wall of black trunks. Between those trees, we caught glimpses of the compound. Fences sagging, guard towers rusted, buildings sinking into the soil. An abandoned Cold War outpost, command had said. But the place didn't look abandoned. It looked asleep, waiting for someone to wake it up. When we finally stopped, none of us spoke. The stillness pressed down hard, like the whole forest was holding its breath. We unloaded gear and started setting up our perimeter without a word. The air was dense, charged, as if we were trespassing on something that hadn't forgotten us. The base looked dead, but there was movement in the corner of my vision, shapes along the tree line, too far to make out, too steady to be tricks of light. Figures, motionless, just watching. You learn not to mention things like that out loud. If you do, they become real. So we worked in silence, pretending we didn't see them. By the time the sun dropped behind the ridge, the temperature had plunged 20 degrees. Summer nights I'm supposed to feel like that. Even the fire we lit refused to hold warmth. And then came the first sound. The radio crackled, faint but distinct. Not the usual hiss of static, but a voice. Male, slow, deliberate. I couldn't make out the words, but they weren't coming from any of our channels. The comm specialist ran diagnostics, convinced it was interference. But I knew better. There was no interference this far out, just us in the woods. I didn't know it yet, but that was the start of it. The moment everything shifted from strange to wrong. There were 6 of us in total. Small team. Enough to stay quiet, not enough to mount a rescue. I've been through Iraq, Afghanistan, and a dozen places the map doesn't admit exist. But nothing prepared me for this. My name's Sergeant Daniels. I've seen enough combat to recognize when fear starts braiding down a man's neck. I saw it in my team the moment we stepped out of the truck. Corporal Simmons, the rookie, was pale as paper, eyes darting to every shadow. Staff Sergeant Williams, the senior man, kept his jaw tight, the kind of look you wear when you're trying not to admit you're unsettled. Private Hill tried to joke his nerves away, but his laughter sounded hollow in the cold air. We were dropped off in a small clearing a mile out from the perimeter, then hiked the rest of the way. No backup, no extraction schedule, no explanation why this base had to be checked now. Just orders. Assess, record, report. But even before we reached the main gate, I could tell there was something wrong with this place. The buildings weren't just decaying, they looked disturbed, like they'd been clawed at, scraped down by something alive. Windows shattered inward, not outward. Metal doors warped from the inside. It felt less like time had done it, and more like the structures had tried to escape themselves. We took shelter in the old guard shack outside a fence. The air inside smelled like dust and rusted oil, like time trapped in a bottle. The radio setup went smoothly at first, but the static was constant, like someone whispering through white noise. Williams said it was feedback from the mountains, but I'd worked in worse terrain. This was different, pulsing, rhythmic, almost like breathing. We got the generator running, then split up for initial checks. Williams and Hill took the north sector. I stayed with Simmons to monitor comms. I remember watching the younger man's hands shake as he adjusted the dials, the green light flickering across his face. "You cold, Corporal?" I asked. He shook his head, eyes locked on the receiver. "It's not cold, sir. It's just off." He was right. The temperature was wrong. The silence was wrong. Everything was wrong. Around midnight, the fog rolled in, thick, heavy, creeping low across the ground, like it had a purpose. That was when the scratching started. Faint at first, like claws dragging over concrete. I figured it was wind pushing debris against the fence, but then came the footsteps, slow, pacing, measured, right outside the shack. I froze, motioned Simmons to kill the lantern. The darkness swallowed us whole. We listened. The steps circled once, then stopped. A moment later, the radio came alive again. Not static this time. A whisper, clearer now. It said something that still echoes in my mind. "We see you." I grabbed the receiver, demanded identification, but the line went dead. just silence again, thick and absolute. When Williams and Hill returned an hour later, they looked shaken. Williams claimed they'd seen lights flickering in one of the storage buildings. White, sharp, moving in patterns like someone walking with a lantern. But the base had no power, no generators online, no reason for lights to be there. We all gathered by the dying fire, and for a long time no one said anything. We just listened to the woods breathing around us and to the faint hum coming from the base. It wasn't the sound of machinery, it was deeper, older, like the ground itself was resonating. I remember staring at the fence, thinking it looked less like protection and more like a cage, keeping something in, not keeping us out. I told myself it was just nerves, the kind of unease that settles into your head after too long in the dark. But deep down, I knew we'd crossed into something else, something the Army never trained us for, something that didn't want us there. The first 2 days passed an uneasy routine, though none of it felt normal. We ran perimeter checks, cataloged debris, recorded environmental data, and tried to act like soldiers on a standard recon mission. But beneath every motion, there was a quiet tension, a waiting sense that something unseen was pacing just beyond the fence. Simmons had gone quiet after the first night. He followed orders, but his hands trembled whenever the wind rustled through the pines. Hill tried to keep the mood light, tossing out nervous jokes that didn't land. "Maybe it's just old ghosts," he said while checking the east perimeter. "Probably Cold War spooks still on shift." His grin faltered when he realized no one was laughing. By the third morning, even Williams stopped pretending everything was fine. We'd been trained to recognize when morale starts to fray. This was past that. The air had a heaviness to it, thick and electric, like the kind that builds before a lightning strike. The base itself felt alive. Every building carried its own quiet pulse. Every corridor seemed to breathe. When I walked the line alone that morning, I kept catching glimpses of movement between the buildings, just flickers, silhouettes slipping behind walls. I told myself it was the light, but the sun hadn't moved. Nothing about this place made sense. Later that afternoon, I found Hill standing under the skeleton of an old watchtower, his rifle slung uselessly at his side. He was staring straight up, frozen. "You good, Hill?" I asked, approaching quietly. He didn't answer at first, just kept staring. "Someone's up there," he muttered finally. I followed his gaze. The tower was empty, bare steel and broken steps. Nothing moved. I told him he was probably seeing shadows, but I didn't believe myself. There was something in his voice that made my skin crawl. When night fell again, the quiet returned, the same unnatural silence that seemed to swallow every sound. We gathered by the fire, trying to eat, but no one had much appetite. The sky turned darker faster than it should have, the stars fading behind thick clouds. The air smelled like wet iron. Williams sat across from me. Williams need the weight to give up. They can't find the affecting walk. "I will sweep again at dawn. We'll sweep again at dawn," he said. "We'll wait this up for you. We'll fight this way. We'll wait," he said. Simmons was fiddling with the radio, fine-tuning the dials, when the static shifted. This time it wasn't random noise. The signal broke through, clear, direct, human. The voice was faint, warped by interference, but the words were undeniable. "Get out now." Every one of us froze. Simmons looked up, eyes wide. "You heard that, right?" Williams nodded slowly, jaw tight. "Yeah, I heard it." He tried to brush it off, said it was probably a stray broadcast bleeding through the channels, but his tone didn't match the words. No one spoke for a long time after that. The fire hissed as the wind picked up, carrying with it a sound almost like whispering, threads of syllables too soft to understand. We turned in early, but none of us really slept. I woke just after midnight to the sound of metal scraping across concrete. It wasn't the wind this time. It was deliberate, steady, too heavy to be an animal. I grabbed my rifle and slipped out of the shack. Williams was already awake, boots half-laced, face pale. "You hear that?" he asked. "Yeah." We woke the others, and together we followed the sound. It came from inside the base, near the storage hangars. The moonlight cut faint silver lines across the ground as we moved, flashlights off, rifles raised. The scraping stopped when we reached the main gate. The silence that followed was worse. Then we saw it, something tall, human-shaped, moving between the shadows of the old warehouses. It was dragging something heavy, the metal-on-metal sound echoing all the walls. "Identify yourself," Williams barked, stepping forward. The figure froze. It turned slowly, and for a moment I thought it might be one of ours, maybe some drifter who'd stumbled in. Then the beam of my flashlight caught its face, or what was left of it. Pale skin stretched thin across bone, eyes wide and hollow, like glass marbles sunk too deep. No color, no emotion, no recognition, just emptiness. Jesus Christ, Hell whispered. What the hell is that? I couldn't answer. My chest felt tight, my pulse thundering in my ears. The figure twitched once, then vanished, sliding back into the dark faster than anything human should move. The scraping stopped, swallowed by silence. Move, I ordered, adrenaline cutting through the fear. We closed in on the warehouse, sweeping corners, rifles steady, but inside there was nothing, just rusted equipment, toppled crates, and decades of dust. No footprints, no drag marks, no sign anything had been there at all. It was as if the ground had erased it. Williams cursed under his breath, scanning the far wall. I saw it, he muttered. I swear to God, I saw it. No one argued. We all had. We regrouped outside, the night pressing in close around us. For a while, no one said a word. The fog was thicker now, curling around our boots, reflecting the faint light of our lanterns like smoke. It was then I realized the forest beyond the fence was utterly silent again. No wind, no movement, no life. We made our way back to camp in silence, every one of us pretending not to glance over our shoulders. I sat awake until dawn, listening to the faint hum that seemed to rise from the ground itself, low and steady, like a pulse beneath the earth. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, but I knew it was already too late. Whatever we'd seen that night, whatever was moving in those ruins, it wasn't done with us. And deep down, I understood something I couldn't admit to the others. We hadn't discovered the base, it had discovered us. The following day blurred into one long stretch of dread and exhaustion. We didn't talk about what we'd seen, not directly. Every man there had his own version of it, his own shadow that wouldn't leave the edge of his vision. But none of us were brave enough to name it. The silence between us said enough. Williams tried to hold the team together with routine, but even he had started to look over his shoulder too often. The forest seemed to close in tighter each hour, the air pressing against our chests like we were breathing through cloth. That morning, Simmons was jittery as hell, checking the radio every few minutes like he expected it to come alive again. Hill was quieter than usual, his jokes gone, his eyes bloodshot. Around noon, the light changed, gray and flat, the kind of daylight that drains color from everything. We spent the afternoon checking the outer perimeter, taking solar readings and photographing what was left of the old command posts. Nothing about it felt right. The walls were covered in deep gouges, scratches too wide for tools, too uneven for machinery. In one corner of the concrete foundation, I found what looked like burned handprints fused into the surface, fingers long and unnatural. I didn't tell the others. There was no point. We were already beyond explanation. As the sun dipped behind the ridgeline, the cold came creeping back. It wasn't normal cold. It felt like the warmth was being pulled out of the world itself. We lit the fire early, gathering around it without saying much. The flickering light cast strange shadows on the rusted walls around us, stretching and twisting like they were moving on their own. Simmons kept glancing at the radio set up beside him, its red indicator light blinking steady. We should try a long-range frequency, he said. Maybe we can reach command if the mountains are interfering. Williams shook his head. We've tried every channel. There's nothing out there. Then, what about the message last night? Simmons asked quietly. The voice that told us to get out? Williams didn't answer. He just stared into the fire, jaw tight. I could see the argument forming in his eyes, but he swallowed it back. It didn't matter what any of us believed anymore. There was something here, and it didn't want us to leave. Around 0200 hours, I woke to movement outside the shack. It wasn't footsteps this time. It was the sound of breathing, slow, wet, deliberate. I sat up, reaching for my rifle, my pulse hammering in my throat. Through the thin cracks in the wall, I could see shapes shifting in the fog, dozens of them, standing still, watching. For a long moment, none of them moved. Then, as if sensing my awareness, they all turned at once and disappeared into the dark. I woke the others. Williams and Hill swept the area, flashlights cutting through mist, but there was nothing. No tracks, no figures, nothing but the same silence pressing down heavier than before. This place isn't empty, Hill said, his voice shaking. I don't care what command said. Something's still here. He was right, but there was nowhere else to go. We were stuck until extraction, and that wasn't scheduled for another 4 days. The next morning, I found Hill sitting by the fence, his rifle across his knees. He looked like he hadn't slept. You ever feel like we're being studied? He asked quietly, like we're part of someone else's drill. I didn't answer. The truth was gnawing at me too. Every camera we set up malfunctioned. Every data log corrupted. It was as if the base itself refused to be recorded. By mid-afternoon, our nerves were shot. The smallest sound sent our hands to our rifles. We had stopped eating. Even the forest seemed to mock us, branches snapping in patterns that felt deliberate, like something mimicking movement to draw us out. I caught Simmons staring into the tree line for long stretches, whispering under his breath. When I asked what he was saying, he just muttered, "I'm trying to make it stop." That night, the radio came alive again. No static this time, just a clear, rhythmic tapping. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short, Morse code, SOS. Simmons scrambled for the headset, trying to trace the signal, but it wasn't coming from command. It was local, coming from somewhere inside the base. Williams gave the order immediately. "Gear up, we're finding that signal." We moved out under red light, rifles ready, the fog swallowing the world beyond 10 feet. The air was dense enough to taste, metallic and bitter. The signal grew louder the closer we got to the main compound, the rhythmic tapping echoing through the empty halls. Inside, our boots struck the concrete with hollow thuds. The building was a corpse, its walls flayed by time, ceilings sagging, wires dangling like veins. The sound drew us toward a corridor lined with doors, most of them sealed shut by rust. The one at the end was slightly ajar. "Hill, cover left," I said. "Simmons, on me." We pushed the door open, flashlights cutting through layers of dust and cobweb. The signal stopped. Inside was an old communications room, racks of obsolete equipment, shattered screens, wires spilling like guts. In the center of the room sat a single field transmitter. It was on. A faint green light blinked steadily. William stepped closer, squinting. "That's not possible," he muttered. The power grid was dead. Everything else in the building was stone cold. Then the transmitter clicked. A voice whispered through the static, calm, precise, too close to the microphone. "You shouldn't have come." The light flickered, and the smell of ozone filled the air. The speakers popped once, twice, then went silent. None of us moved. Simmons was the first to speak, his voice barely a breath. "We're not supposed to be here." Williams turned, his eyes hard. "We finish the mission, we document, then we leave." But we all knew it wasn't that simple. The radio hadn't been a warning. It was a confirmation. Something was here, aware of us, and it was using the tools we trusted most to speak. That night, as we returned to camp, the forest felt smaller, like the trees had crept closer while we were gone. I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd opened a door that was never meant to be opened, and whoever was on the other side had noticed. That night broke whatever thin line of sanity we'd been clinging to. None of us spoke about the voice on the radio, but we all felt its weight pressing into the silence, like a command we couldn't disobey. We tried to keep to our tasks, to stick to the rhythm of military routine, check the perimeter, log data, monitor comms, but the order in our movements was gone. It was just survival now. By the time the sun went down again, the forest felt wrong in a new way. The air had lost its smell. The soil no longer carried the scent of pine or rot. It was sterile, empty, like the world around us was being replaced, piece by piece, with something hollow. Simmons was jumpy, flinching at every noise. Hill hadn't slept in nearly 48 hours. Williams looked older by the hour. The lines in his face, cut deep, like the mountain itself, was wearing him down. I tried to keep my voice steady, but inside I was unraveling. We all were. When the wind stopped, even the fire felt foreign, its crackle muted, its light refusing to reach past the ring of stones. The base loomed behind us, dark and endless. I kept thinking about that voice, how it didn't sound human, but wasn't quite mechanical either. Something in between, something imitating speech. The night dragged on slow, time stretching thin and strange. Around 30:00, I woke to the sound of footsteps again, this time heavier, closer, not pacing, dragging, like boots filled with mud. I reached for my rifle, every muscle tightening. Outside, the fog glowed faintly under the moonlight. I could see movement at the edge of camp, shapes gliding between the buildings. Not animals, not men. Williams emerged from his tent, his face drawn, finger to his lips. He'd heard it too. We waited, listening to the rhythm of the steps. Then it stopped. For a heartbeat, there was nothing. Then, from the radio, a low hum rose, steady, deep, vibrating through the ground. It wasn't static this time. It was a frequency. Simmons lunged for the receiver, twisting knobs, but the sound only grew louder. And then, beneath that hum, came a whisper so soft, I almost thought I imagined it. "We are here." The lights on the radio blinked in perfect rhythm with the voice, like it was speaking through the machine's pulse. Williams snapped, yanking the power cord out of the wall. The hum stopped. The silence that followed felt alive. That's when we heard the scream, It came from outside, sharp and real. Hill's voice. I was out the door before Williams could stop me. The fog swallowed me whole, the cold biting through my gear. "Hill!" I shouted, but the sound barely carried. The forest around the base looked different now, shadows twisting like they were breathing. The scream came again, farther away this time, toward the perimeter fence. I ran harder, lungs burning, the world narrowing to that one sound. When I reached the fence line, the noise cut off mid-breath. I froze. Something was moving in the mist ahead of me. I raised my rifle, flashlight trembling in my hand. The beam caught movement, a figure standing just beyond the fence. For a second, relief flooded through me. It looked like Hill. Same height, same uniform. "Hill, talk to me," I shouted. No response. The figure stood perfectly still. I took a step closer, my boots crunching against gravel. That's when I realized what was wrong. Hill's gear was wrong. His vest hung backward, his helmet twisted, his dog tags gleaming from the wrong side of his neck. I felt ice crawl through my veins. "Hill," I whispered. Slowly, the figure turned. The light hit its face, and every breath left my lungs. It wasn't Hill, not anymore. His skin was ashen, stretched thin like paper over bone. His eyes were black hollows, his mouth fixed in a soundless scream. For a split second, he seemed to recognize me, or maybe mimic recognition, then vanished into the fog like he'd been erased from the world. I stumbled backward, pulse hammering, scanning the mist for any sign of movement. Nothing. Just that terrible silence again. I radioed Williams, but all I got was static. When I finally made it back to camp, they were waiting. Simmons looked pale, almost translucent in the firelight. Williams stood by the dead radio, his hand shaking. "Hill's gone," I said. Williams didn't answer. He didn't have to. We all knew. The rules of this place were changing, bending into something we couldn't fight. We spent the rest of the night awake, rifles in our laps, the fire dying slow. Every few minutes, I caught movement in the fog, shapes that looked almost human, standing just far enough away to disappear when I blinked. Morning never really came, just a faint gray light leaking through the mist. We searched for Hill at first light, following what little trail he'd left. The ground near the fence was disturbed, like something heavy had been dragged, but it didn't lead anywhere. The tracks just stopped, ended mid-path, as if he'd been lifted clean off the earth. Williams called for radio backup again, but the system was dead. Even the power cells were drained, like something had sucked the energy right out of them. Simmons wouldn't speak. He just kept staring into the woods, whispering under his breath again. When I asked what he was saying, he looked up with hollow eyes. "They're still talking," he said. "Even without the radio, I can still hear them." I didn't ask who they were. I didn't want to know. That night, as darkness fell for the fourth time since we'd arrived, I felt something inside me break, the belief that we'd ever leave this place. The forest wasn't just watching anymore. It was learning. It was wearing our voices, our faces, our fear. And as I stared out past the fence into the endless gray, I realized something that chilled me deeper than any ghost story ever could. The base wasn't haunted by the dead. It was haunted by what the living had left behind. By dawn, no one was pretending anymore. The chain of command had broken without a word. It wasn't defiance, just the quiet acceptance that orders meant nothing here. The base had its own rhythm now, and we were part of it, caught in a cycle that didn't care who we were or what patch we wore. Hell was gone, taken or erased, and though Williams tried to treat it like a field loss, his eyes betrayed him. He'd seen too much. We all had. The sun barely rose that morning, just smeared pale light across the fog, like a wound that refused to heal. Breakfast went untouched. Simmons sat near the fire, rocking slightly, staring into the coals like he was trying to remember what warmth felt like. Williams barked orders to stay busy, check the perimeter, maintain structure, act like soldiers, but there was no command left to follow, just survival. I went with him to sweep the north end, while Simmons stayed to monitor comms, though we both knew there was nothing left to monitor. As we moved through the overgrown field, I noticed something I hadn't before. The trees closest to the fence were dead, not decayed, not burned, just colorless, drained as if life itself had been pulled from the bark. The air buzzed faintly, a low static hum that made the skin on my arms prickle. It wasn't wind, it wasn't natural. It felt like the hum of an engine, buried deep beneath the soil, still running long after it should have stopped. We circled back toward the command building, our boots crunching over gravel and glass. The sound echoed too loudly, as if the ground beneath us were hollow. Williams stopped abruptly and raised his hand. "You hear that?" he whispered. I did. A faint rhythmic tapping from inside the command center. Not metal on metal this time, something softer. Fingertips. I tightened my grip on the rifle, and together we pushed through the warped door. The air inside was colder than outside by at least 10 degrees. Our breath fogged instantly. The tapping continued, steady and patient, from somewhere deeper within. "Stay sharp," Williams muttered, his voice barely audible. We moved through the corridor, flashlights cutting narrow beams across the peeling walls. The sound led us into a room we hadn't explored before, a mess hall long collapsed under dust and mildew. And there, sitting upright at one of the tables, was Hill's helmet, the same one he'd left behind. I felt my throat tighten. Williams approached slowly, reaching out a gloved hand. The second he touched it, the tapping stopped. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, without warning, the intercom system crackled to life overhead, a voice whispering through static. "Observation complete." The words barely formed, distorted, but they were clear enough to freeze us where we stood. The speakers popped, the lights flickered, and somewhere deep below the building, a heavy metallic clang echoed like a vault door being sealed. William stepped back, shaking his head. "What the hell does that mean?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The truth was already crawling up my spine. We weren't just being haunted. We were being watched, tested, measured. Whatever this place was, it hadn't been built to contain ghosts. It had been built to make them. We returned to camp in silence. Simmons looked up as we approached, eyes wide, pupils dilated. "You heard it too, didn't you?" he asked, his voice raw. I nodded once. "Observation complete," he repeated under his breath, as if trying to decipher the words, like an experiment. Williams cut him off. "Pack your gear. We're leaving." It wasn't an order. It was desperation. We loaded what little we could carry, left the rest behind, and started toward the main trail weaving back through the valley. But every few minutes, the compass needles twitched wildly, spinning without direction. The radio bled soft static that rose and fell like breathing. By midday, we realized we weren't walking out. The landscape itself had changed. Paths we'd taken the day before no longer existed. The trees were positioned differently, landmarks gone. Even the light felt wrong. Too bright, too flat, like it was filtering through water. Williams cursed under his breath, checking the map again and again, as if it could somehow realign the world. "We're circling," he finally said. "We've been walking in circles." Simmons stopped moving, eyes distant. "It won't let us leave." He said it with a certainty that scared me more than the situation itself. I wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, but I couldn't, because I knew he wasn't. We camped again that night, though calling it camp felt hollow. The fire refused to stay lit for more than a few minutes before dying into embers. The air pulsed with that same underground hum, and every now and then, I'd hear faint whispers drifting through it, our names, spoken just barely above hearing. I lay awake, staring at the stars that weren't there, and thought about what Hill had looked like when I saw him last. The face that wasn't his, the way he'd moved, like a puppet on invisible strings. Sometime before dawn, I heard movement outside again. I thought it was Williams on watch, but when I stepped out, the fire was out and his rifle was lying abandoned near the edge of camp. "Williams?" I whispered. No response. The fog had returned, thicker than ever, swallowing the base in a wall of gray. I could see something moving through it, tall shapes, gliding more than walking. I raised my weapon, but my hands were shaking so hard I could barely aim. The shapes stopped just short of the light, their outlines barely visible. One of them tilted its head, slow, deliberate. Then I heard it, Williams's voice. "Daniels, stay still." But it didn't come from the fog. It came from behind me. I turned. Williams was standing there, pale, trembling, staring past me at the shapes. "Don't move," he whispered. "They don't like movement." I held my breath. The fog shifted, and for a brief second, one of the shapes stepped into the light. It was wearing pieces of our gear, uniform fragments, shredded patches, boots too small for its feet. Its skin was pale and stretched thin like wax. Its face was blank, features smeared as if drawn and erased at the same time. It tilted its head again, and every hair on my body stood up. William slowly raised his rifle. "Back away," he whispered. The creature twitched once, then vanished into the mist, like smoke pulled by wind. The rest followed, dissolving soundlessly. We stood there for a long time, afraid to breathe. When the fog finally began to lift, the sun never rose. Just gray, endless gray. I realized then that it wasn't weather. It was the base itself keeping the light out, containing us, watching us. And deep down, I knew what observation complete really meant. We weren't the first to be sent here. We were just the next phase of whatever experiment this place had started decades ago. And like the others, we weren't meant to leave. Simmons and I didn't speak for most of the next day. There wasn't anything left to say. The realization had sunk in. The base wasn't a ruin we stumbled upon. It was a machine, still running long after it should have stopped, and we were trapped inside it. The fog never cleared. The compass needles spun endlessly. Every direction led us back to the same broken structures, the same twisted trees. Even time felt wrong. My watch froze at 0900 hours and stayed there. The seconds hand trembled, but never moved. Williams walked ahead of us, jaw locked tight, his eyes sunken and wild. He'd stopped looking at the map hours ago. I think he knew, just like I did, that the terrain was rearranging itself. The land was folding around us, reshaping every path we tried to take. By afternoon, the static on the radio returned. It didn't sound random anymore. It had rhythm, pauses, pulses, short bursts, Morse code again. But this time it wasn't an SOS, it was coordinates. And those coordinates led straight back to the command building. The same one where we'd heard the voice whisper, "Observation complete." Williams wanted to ignore it, but Simmons said it best. "We're not getting out unless we face it." There was something final in his tone, the kind of conviction that comes when fear has burned itself out and all that's left is acceptance. We packed light, ammo, flashlights, rations we didn't need, and went back in. The building looked worse than before, like it had aged 100 years overnight. The paint had peeled down to raw concrete, and the air stank of ozone and rust. The hum beneath the floor had grown louder, a steady pulse that vibrated through our boots. As we descended into the lower levels, the walls grew slick, damp with condensation, or something else. My flashlight beam trembled as it cut across faded warning signs. Biohazard, Project Wraith, do not enter without clearance. I stopped breathing for a moment. That word, Wraith, hit like a punch. Simmons noticed it too. "What the hell were they doing here?" he whispered. Williams didn't answer. He just pushed forward, deeper into the dark. The stairwell twisted into a corridor lined with glass panels, most of them shattered. Behind one, I caught a glimpse of something that made my stomach drop. A restraint chair, bolted to the floor, the leather strap still slick with something dark. On the wall above it, scrawled in faded marker, were the words, "They become what they study." The deeper we went, the colder it got. The hum turned into a vibration, like standing next to an engine the size of the mountain itself. When we reached the final chamber, the lights flickered to life one by one, baiting a room in sickly yellow glow. The space was massive, rows of old computers, cables running like veins along the floor, and in the center, a cylindrical containment tank filled with dark fluid. The glass was cracked, webbed with fractures. Something inside it was moving. Williams stepped closer, his flashlight cutting through the murk. The thing inside floated motionless for a second, then twitched, its hand pressing weakly against the glass. Human, or close enough to pass for it. "Jesus Christ," Simmons breathed. "They were experimenting on people." Williams backed away, his voice low and broken. "Not people, us." He pointed to the clipboard hanging beside the console, the papers brittle with age. I took it and scanned the notes through the dust. Project Wraith, Phase 4, Convolutive Reflex Retention in Postmortal Subjects. My throat went dry. "They want making weapons," I said. "They were trying to make soldiers who don't die." As if responding to my voice, the tank began to tremble. The liquid inside rippled violently. Then came the sound, a low groan, deep and hollow, rising from everywhere at once. The lights above us flickered, and the hum in the walls shifted pitch, turning sharp and unbearable. Simmons screamed, clutching his head. The air itself vibrated like a living thing. The glass exploded outward. The figure within the tank collapsed onto the floor, its body slick and pale, gasping like it had lungs that didn't know how to work anymore. Williams raised his rifle. "Don't move," he shouted, but the thing wasn't listening. It lifted its head slowly, eyes glowing faintly beneath the grime, and when it opened its mouth, a voice came out. Not its voice, ours. It spoke in Hill's voice first, "Help me," then in Williams's, "Run," then in mine, "You can't leave." My blood froze. Williams fired, but the bullets passed through like smoke. The creature shuddered, then split apart into a mist that crawled across the floor, swallowing the light. The hum turned into a scream that came from the walls themselves, shaking dust loose from the ceiling. I grabbed Simmons by the arm. "Move!" We bolted up the stairs, the sound following us like it was alive, chasing through the corridors. The base groaned, metal grinding against metal. I could feel the air pulsing in time with my heartbeat. When we reached the surface, the sky was black, not night, just void. No stars, no moon, nothing. The forest had vanished, replaced by endless fog stretching in every direction. Williams stumbled ahead, gasping, his face pale as bone. "It's not real," he said. "The whole place, it's not real." I wanted to tell him to shut up, to keep moving, but then I saw it too. The base behind us was dissolving, its edges blurring like an image fading from film. The hum grew distant, replaced by whispers that seemed to come from inside our skulls. Simmons dropped to his knees, screaming, his voice swallowed by the fog. Williams tried to reach in, but the ground shifted, splitting open between them like a wound. I lunged forward, grabbing Williams's vest, dragging him back. "We have to go," I yelled, but there was nowhere to go. Every direction led to the same place, an endless loop of fog and shadow, the base always just ahead no matter how far we ran. By the time we stopped, the whispers had grown into words again, cold and calm, echoing from everywhere. Observation complete. Phase 5 commencing. The fog thickened, pressing against my chest like a hand. I couldn't breathe. Williams dropped beside me, eyes wide, mouth open, whispering the same phrase over and over. "We're not in the world anymore." I don't know how long we lay there, but when the fog began to thin, we were alone. Simmons was gone. The base was silent again, and the hum for the first time had stopped. But the quiet didn't bring relief. It brought something worse, because in that silence, I could hear the faintest trace of breathing. Not mine, not Williams's. The sound was coming from the ground. The silence after the hum stopped was almost unbearable. It was the kind of quiet that presses in from every direction, where even breathing feels too loud. Williams and I sat there in the pale gray light, our nerves so frayed we couldn't tell if the ground beneath us was solid or just pretending to be. I could still hear the faint sound of breathing, steady and slow, coming from the earth itself, like the land was alive and dreaming. I wanted to believe it was just the echo of my own heartbeat, but I knew better. We were standing on something's skin. The fog drifted low, swirling around our boots. I could see the outline of the base reappearing through it, reshaping itself, walls rising, lights flickering on one by one. It wasn't rebuilding, it was waking up. The entire structure pulsed faintly, like a living organ beneath steel and concrete. Williams crouched beside me, whispering, "We have to end it." His voice shook, but there was no hesitation in it. I nodded, though I had no idea what ending it even meant. The files, the tank, the voices, they all pointed to one truth. This place wasn't just haunted by something that happened here. The base was the haunting. It had absorbed everything that died within it. Every thought, every breath, every order screamed into the radio. And now it was feeding on the only thing left, us. Williams slung his rifle, pulled a grenade from his vest, and checked the pin. "We blow the core," he said. "Whatever power's still running down there, we end it." I didn't argue. There was no logic left to cling to, no plan that made sense except destruction. The stairwell leading back into the command building was colder than before, slick with condensation that reeked of iron and decay. My flashlight beam trembled as it hit the walls. Words had been carved into the concrete, thousands of them, layered over each other in different hands, different languages. Stay, listen. They become what they study. The deeper we went, the louder the breathing became, until it wasn't a sound anymore but a vibration in the air, in the marrow of our bones. The chamber with the broken tank was different now. The shattered glass had melted into the floor, and the computers were glowing faintly, screens pulsing with strings of code that made no sense. Symbols, coordinates, fragments of names. One of them was mine. The next was Williams's. "It's copying us," he muttered. "It's rewriting everything that comes here." I stepped closer to the center of the room where the tank had been, and the ground beneath my boots flexed, soft like flesh. The hum returned, faint at first, then rising until it became an almost human groan. "We end it now," Williams said. He pulled the pin and threw the grenade into the center of the chamber. The explosion ripped through the room with deafening force, light and heat flooding every corner. But when the smoke cleared, the chamber was untouched, not a scratch. The equipment still glowed, the hum deeper now, like laughter buried beneath the earth. Williams stared, trembling, then screamed, a raw, hopeless sound that echoed through the corridors. The lights above us flickered red, then the voice came back, not through the speakers this time, but from everywhere at once, echoing through the walls, the floor, the air. Phase 6 commencing. Williams raised his rifle and fired wildly, and to the walls, each shot swallowed by the noise. I grabbed him, yelling for him to stop, but his eyes were already gone, pupils blown wide, face slack with terror. The floor shifted under our feet, rippling like water. Then hands began to push through it, dozens of them, pale and wet, clawing their way toward us. I yanked Williams backward, but one of the hands caught his boot. He fell, screaming, as the ground swallowed him inch by inch. I fired into the mass, but the bullets did nothing. His screams cut off all at once, leaving only the sound of the earth sealing itself shut. I stood there, alone, the air thick with the smell of burned ozone and rot. My ears rang, my hands shook. Then, slowly, the whispers started again. "You can never leave." I stumbled back up the corridor, tripping over debris, my flashlight beams slicing through the dark. Every turn led me back to the same hallway. Every door opened into the same room. The base was folding itself around me. I could feel it closing in, the walls breathing, the hum syncing with my pulse. My vision blurred. I fell once, twice, clawing my way up the final staircase, until I saw the faintest glow of daylight, or what I thought was daylight. I burst through the entrance, gasping for air that didn't taste real. "That's crazy!" The fog was thicker than ever, swirling with a faint red glow beneath it, like embers under ash. The forest was gone again, replaced by endless ridges of black stone that stretched to the horizon. I called for Williams, for Simmons, for anyone. Nothing. Only the echo of my own voice bouncing back, distorted, repeating in the same cadence as the radio had days ago. "Get out now." The realization hit like a punch. The voice on the radio, it had been us. A message caught in a loop, repeating through time, warning whoever came next. I sank to my knees, staring at the horizon as the fog thickened around me. For a moment, I thought I saw movement. Figures walking through the haze, carrying rifles, scanning the ruins. Another team, another mission, the cycle beginning again. I tried to shout, to warn them, but my voice caught in my throat. The air vibrated again, the ground shuddering beneath me. The base was alive, pulling itself back together, ready for its next experiment. I don't remember blacking out, but when I opened my eyes, I was lying in the same clearing where we'd first arrived. The vehicles were gone. The forest was quiet. The air smelled clean, like nothing had ever happened. My rifle was beside me, rusted over as if it had been there for years. I stood slowly, every muscle aching, and looked toward where the base should have been. Nothing, just empty woods. The path behind me was overgrown, the trees thick with moss. I stumbled forward, shouting into the emptiness, but no sound came out, not a single echo. When I reached the edge of the clearing, I saw it, our old camp, the remnants of the fire pit, and something half buried in the dirt. A helmet, Williams's. I knelt down, brushing off the soil, and saw my own name carved into the side. For a long time, I didn't move. I just listened. And faintly, beneath the wind, I heard the hum again, rising from deep below the ground. It wasn't gone. It never would be. We hadn't escaped. We'd been absorbed. We were part of it now. Part of the experiment. Part of the base. That's why no one talks about it. Because they don't remember. They were never meant to. And if anyone ever does find that place again, if they walk far enough into those mountains to hear that hum under their boots, I hope they listen to the voice on the radio. I hope they hear what we heard. Because it won't be a warning. It'll be a recording, a loop, a whisper from the dirt saying, "Welcome back." If you've made it this far, you've walked through the dark with me. What happened out there in those mountains wasn't just another mission. It was a warning buried in steel and static, still pulsing somewhere beneath the soil. Maybe the base is gone. Maybe it's just waiting for the next unit to stumble in. Either way, the hum never stops. If you felt that chill, if you heard the echo too, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss what comes next. Share this story with someone who still believes some places are just abandoned. This is Captain Rebel, signing off. Stay sharp, stay curious, and remember, some coordinates should stay forgotten.